Welcome to the Consultants Way podcast, your go-to resource for all things professional services consulting. Brought to you by McMann and Anthony, a strategy consulting firm with over 30 years of experience helping B2B organizations achieve sustainable growth, and the Consultants Way, the leading comprehensive consultant development program. Hosted by Dean McMann and Anthony Paluska, we share expert insights, firsthand experiences, and conversations with industry leaders on the topics that interest you most.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of their employer, company, or affiliated organizations.
Welcome back to the Consultants Way podcast. Anthony Paluska, Dean McMann. Dean, where are you today? I'm looking at you and you're outside somewhere, and that does not look like your house.
No. I am actually in the Fort Worth area today, and glad to be here. I have a little bit of a family obligation today, and then tomorrow I meet with some people who want to invest in us. So it's and the weather is beautiful. I mean, it's just and that's why I'm outside. You also are not in your normal abode.
I am not. Although I don't know if I have a normal abode these days. It's still a little fluid in my life. But no, I'm in Vegas for the TSIA conference, and so we're going to be putting out some additional content and stuff from this, and recording some things with some people that are here and debriefing that. So if anybody's interested in that, that'll be coming up soon. But that is not the purpose of this conversation because the conference is just now starting. So yeah, I'm sitting in a hotel room right now, and it's always a fun adventure to get all of your equipment set up to record something like that when you're remote. So
on your ironing board.
Yes, it is. My desk is currently an ironing board because the actual desk in here is in this dark corner of the hotel room, and you couldn't even see my face. So, and that may be better for some people, but
I understand that could be a real plus for our listeners. Hey, we have a very exciting show today. I'm very excited for a couple of reasons. One, very articulate, very thoughtful guy, and a heck of a lot of fun. So I think this is going to be really good.
We touch on a bunch of things. So we have Richard Henderson on the podcast today. Richard's got, and he'll share his background here in just a second, but he'll lots of experience in professional services, SaaS organizations, and he's been a couple of different industries and markets throughout his career. But we have a good conversation, I think, today on a deep dive on AI, where that's taking us, what we know, what we don't know so far, and we have some kind of fun theorizing a little bit on what actually is going to happen, and what do we not know, and then therefore what are we actually going to need to do about that, and then we take a bit of a detour, and Richard takes us on a journey of using basketball as an analogy for both business and for consulting, and we chase that maybe even a little too far, where we start talking about building out a way to assess and evaluate consultants like they would in the NBA as part of a combine. But I enjoyed the conversation. Dean, anything you'd point people to pay attention to?
Well, I like very much that when he uses basketball, and I've read and seen all his stuff, he talks a lot about where our heart is own your destiny, be a development player, and we're an organization that needs to give ourselves feedback and needs to develop and become the real advisors that people are paying for. Move to the outcomes, less technical expertise, more. I think he calls it people expertise.
Yeah, it's a great conversation. So I hope everybody enjoys it. And we're here today with Richard Henderson. Richard, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks, Dean.
Yeah, happy to have you here. Richard, we'll have given a brief introduction about you on the front end, but you're an accomplished PS leader with global roles, lots of organizations, lots of experience here, but walk the audience through a bit of your background before we dive into a couple of topics today.
Yeah, tell us about your childhood.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I won't drain it, but I do always like to, when I introduce myself, start with I have a background, my undergraduate degree is in music. So obviously I'm in professional services as a result of that. I got a degree in cello performance, and then got an MBA, and from there went into consulting, spent 15 years in one specific industry vertical, 12 of those years have been with a SaaS leading SaaS provider, and I've done operations in PS where I led a P&L, and then now I've got a global role where I'm selling and doing our engagement strategies for all of our customers globally.
That's great. And with that experience, a bunch of different organizations, but and some different industries as well. I think I can guess the answer to that. But what is the trend of the day? What is the thing that you're solving now that is different than things that you've had to deal with in any other points in your career? Right? What's new in PS?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're navigating through a change in era, really. And I think about this all the time. I don't know if you guys think in these terms, but innovation has gone through these periods of time where we're like in the industrial era, and then we came into the computer age and the PC age. Most recently, we're in the cloud mobile age, and we're going from cloud mobile into this AI world. And so it's really let a day, let alone an hour, go by without thinking about AI, how it impacts our business and how it impacts the way we go to market, and offer value to our customers.
Yeah, no, we are definitely at an age of that right now. I'm sitting in a hotel room as we're talking about this at a conference where the only topic that is being discussed is how are the AI native organizations cannibalizing and going to infringe on all the incumbent technology organizations that are out there. And there's just this challenge that all PS leaders and services leaders and leaders of companies at large that are trying to wrestle with right now, which is like, okay, where are things going to shake out? We know we need to start acting, but at periods of tremendous change, like what you're talking about, it's tough to see far enough into the future to know exactly what direction to head, but we also can't stand still. So it's it is definitely the topic of the time. How are you guys thinking about this? How are you personally viewing this transformation and what it means for your organization and where you're headed?
Yeah, so I recently wrote a paper, and I think you might have seen it, Anthony, but like three things that I think are really sticking out for me. One is I think there's a lot of hard work that still is to be done in the AI world. So I hear so much from a podcast or from a talk, keynote speaker perspective about what the future looks like 5-10 years from now. And I can get my head around that. I think a lot of us can. But what does tomorrow look like? What does the next quarter look like? What does the next fiscal year look like? And what it looks like, in my opinion, is a lot of hard work, which is no different than what we've always done. So it means like understanding your business to the point where you can train AI to do the tasks that you want to train it to do. And that's no small thing. We don't just, I don't think we're in a place where we can just like point it and let it go. We actually have to be the ones that kind of articulate what it is. I'll just go through the three things. The second one I said is creativity is not its strength. And so I think original thought is a really important thing that we uniquely have as humans. Now, once we get to general artificial intelligence, maybe creativity comes into the picture. But I would encourage anybody to go into your favorite GPT model or your favorite AI model and ask it to do something creative, name something, give you a joke, tell you a compelling story. And it's kind of like, it's like annoyingly bad. It's like the joke that you would hear, you've heard 1,000 times before because it's just synthesizing what it knows from the internet. Or like I tried to get it to name a fantasy football team for me, and they were all very bad. I just asked my 12-year-old, and he had like 3 suggestions that were way better. And then the third thing that I think is really critical and maybe the most important, especially for anybody who's listening to this podcast, is really lean into human skills. So there's a lot of people who are going after the AI piece, and maybe a lot of people listen to this, and certainly everybody should be doing something. But when you want to differentiate yourself and what value you have, it's always going to be human driven. It's going to be relationship driven. It's going to be creating trust, which AI, for at least a decade, in my opinion, maybe more, will not have the ability to create the kind of trust that we can as humans. It'll be like really synthesizing problems in a human-oriented way and a quick back and forth. So I think FaceTime really building on human-oriented skills.
Richard, would you say then that, and this is something we've been saying, so the consultative skills of really dealing with your client, really being an advisor, are, at least for this period, going to be more valuable. And we haven't, as a industry, done well at getting everybody to do that anyway, right? So we already lack that.
That's right. Yeah, and so many. So I'll just take it a step further, Dean. I think so many organizations are very, I would say, anxious, maybe even nervous about getting their people to skill up on AI. I saw Accenture laid off a huge workforce. The headline explanation was, these are the people that we don't think can be AI native. And I would say, while you're doing that, because we're all doing that, while you're getting skilled up on AI, also keep in mind, what are the things that differentiate you? What are those consulting skills? What are the face-to-face skills, relationship building skills, and double down on them, because now is the time to double down. It will, when you look at embedded PS organizations, which is a lot of your audience, and one of the things I really love about what you guys do with the show, you're talking about organizations with a large percentage of their human capital invested in engineers. Doing this thing where we sort of like blur our eyes and look out 5 years, engineering becomes a commodity that's done by a machine. It's not really a human. So the organizational landscape is going to have to flex. So what do we do with all these engineers? Well, they need the skills that consultants have. They need to understand the business landscape. They need to understand all the consulting skills, how to ask questions, how to do playbacks, how to put proposals in front of clients that make a lot of sense to them. And that's why I just really encourage people, like, the time is coming, I think, where these human skills really rise to the top as the differentiator. No longer are the engineering skills the thing, because it will become commoditized, I think.
So that means you got to have a partnership with the entity that doesn't really always understand PS anyway, right? To really hold people accountable to get those skills.
Maybe a PR campaign. Like, we all need to be like, hey, by the way, let me knock on your door and say, you've got a lot of people who understand the business content that you really need to feed into these AIs, and we're sitting over here. And so I think we all kind of have that responsibility to do that PR campaign.
Yeah, particularly internally. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
It's a lot of education. But and as you said, the engineers, they're not all engineers, but I think our industry knows what we mean by that. They are reluctant to naturally go that way. It's against the grain. It's not native for them.
Yeah, they're going to. So all of the architects, all the engineers, all the technically minded people, let's say it that way, they are going to gravitate into deeper understanding of what the AI models are doing, for good reason. We want them to do that. But that's creating this gap where now the people who understand the business content, understand how customers think and behave, what value props look like, that gap is now expanded because they're going deeper into the technical. We have to go deeper into the business side of things, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And yeah, but I totally agree with your point, right? Where both organizations are pushing our technical teams to get deeper and deeper into the technical details and become AI smarter on AI. And I was talking to an organization yesterday that says they carve out an hour every week where their team is supposed to go and experiment with some new AI product that they hadn't used before. And it's the intent of it is just to try and raise everybody's level of comprehension and understanding of what tools are out there, how they're available, whatever. I mean, just all of that. And so the organizations are pushing their teams in that direction. And then people have the natural tendency that says, hey, for the longest time, my value, right? I derive my value and I viewed my value as my technical expertise. And so I wanted to continue to advance that so that I can keep that mode of my personal differentiation. And that's a completely reasonable thing to do, right? We all do it in every aspect, right? Whether we're technical or not, of, hey, what we're good at, let's get better at that and continue to, build on your strengths, right? It's the whole mindset behind the, if you've ever done like the Strengths Finder assessment, right? It's, hey, there's 32 different ones out there, but only pick your top 5 and continue to double and triple down on those and get better. But we're going to run into a situation where both the organizations need us to be a differentiation, and that differentiation is not about our technical skills anymore because that's getting commoditized. It's about our understanding of our customer and our ability to guide our customers to outcomes. And the technical work is going away in some ways, and it might not go away tomorrow, but we're moving in a direction where, right, that becomes easier to automate and to run through agents and through AI models than, to your point, right, the creative or more of the consultative skills. Yeah. So we're in a tough spot right now where we're not giving our teams, and this isn't like everyone, but like generally speaking, we're pointing them in a direction that's actually not helping them or us as an organization.
Yeah, I'll pull on that thread a little bit where we want people, this dedicated time to explore tools. I think everybody's doing that. One of the things I've seen that I find a little concerning is like, if you just do it in a play mode, which I think is really important. I mean, that's how people learn, but that's my sort of recapitulating back to my point number one, which is like discipline now is more important than ever. Have an attack. Like if you're an organization and you're going after an AI strategy, planning and an attack strategy is more important now than ever, because you want that focus to see where those pieces of value exist in the way that helps you in the evolution of your organization and the evolution of your go-to-market strategy. Like, be super intentional, I think, is critical.
Yeah. And it's this interesting thing where I like your comment on, hey, if you're just playing with this and you're not actually like practically applying it to the direction that we want our AI strategy to head, then to what end, right? It just reinforces the fact that we don't have a real strategy there. And so many, and I love your opinion on this, I see so many PS teams, but you could take it beyond PS, are saying, hey, this is our AI strategy. But what they haven't done is tell me what their PS strategy is or their business strategy is. And then AI has to sit inside that. We're putting the cart before the horse. And
I know we haven't talked about this, but this is something I've been like obsessively thinking about lately, which is I just categorize it under the umbrella of two systems thinking, or like multi-systems thinking. So we should always be in like, anytime we express our ideas in like single threaded ideas or single system, we're sort of like, if you think of it as a zero sum game, like we're negating something. We have to embrace the concept of two systems thinking. I have to operate the business I have today with a clear strategy that may include a tiny bit of AI. And then I also need to be, sort of innovator's dilemma. I need to be incubating all the things that I'm doing in the future. And then I need to like very strategically think about where those points merge. And this is like a big, overwhelming kind of problem. So I think, this is like, when you're at your offsites with your leadership team and you're really trying to get your head around this stuff, I just encourage anybody to think in multi-systems, particularly two systems thinking, because I think that's the most common way to think about it. But what does today look like? And then what does like whatever the next future looks like?
Yeah, I was with a team yesterday, and we were taking a simple problem of change management, just a simple problem, and getting ahead and guiding as opposed to responding. And half of them thought, no, we're not going to learn that because AI will eventually do that. And the other half were like, well, the changes come because the clients make them. We don't have any part of that. We have a form. They literally told me, we have a form for that. I go, well,
yeah,
that's not going to serve you 2 years from now.
I don't know what you think about this, Dean, but this is what I think is symptomatic of a lot of like PS organizations, that I think anybody in our world is built to serve. Like, that's just what we do, right? I mean, it's in the name. But sometimes it's so critical for us to take control of our own destiny. Like, what do you want it to be? Don't be the victim of, AI is going to be aware of it, be knowledgeable about what it's going to look like, but be an author of your own journey and where you're going next. So find those points of control that you can take.
Absolutely. I think that all of PS should have the attitude that we're in control and we're in the destiny. And that's the role of getting paid from the client's point of view. They're not paying, and the buyer is not paying. They're paying for outcomes.
Yeah.
They want to require a guide. Yeah. And we find ourselves in this weird crutch. I actually think long-term, this is really good for the industry. We're proponents of, as you said, you like what we do. We're proponents of the industry doing well, right?
Right.
We do all the things we do, both inside our firewall, our paywall, and outside. Just let's make this better for everybody. And if we just embrace, and I loved we own our destiny. If you just start with that thought, that cascades a lot of change.
Right. Yeah.
Don't be the victim.
Don't be a victim. Take control. Have a point of view. Yeah.
And it doesn't even matter if it's wrong. You're starting the conversation, right? Yeah.
Well, at this stage, I think it's bound to be wrong, but we need to be moving in a direction, and that direction will be closer to the future destination than where we are right now. But we need to commit to that. We can't be chaotic about it. We can't pass that burden along to our teams to figure out, and because they're worried about all this as well. And so we have to, as leaders, I think, take a stance and say, to your point, right? Hey, what is our strategy for the current state, and what is our strategy for how we're going to move this business forward, and make sure that we're continuing to evolve so that we stay one step ahead of the market, the competition, whatever's on the horizon.
And maybe we collectively owe it to the market. We owe it to our customers to have that kind of like compelling point of view, or sometimes provocative point of view. I'm a big fan of Dan Eyerly. He wrote this book called Predictably Irrational and the Upside of Irrationality. Anyway, in that book, he has this great thing that's applicable to everybody's life, which is like, you can never decide where you want to go to dinner, and people throw out options. Do you want to go to Mexican? No, I don't really feel like that tonight. Do you want to go out for Italian? No, I don't really feel like that tonight. But it's giving a point of view is what allows people to channel in what their real desire is. And I think in some extended analogy, like we could do that for the market on AI. We can say, hey, this is our point of view, and then people can react to it. No, I think it's slightly different, or actually agree with your perspective on that.
Yeah. We've all been in these situations where we're helping to do a consulting project for a client, and we're kicking off a new engagement, or we're helping to sell an engagement or something like that. If we just showed up with a blank piece of paper and said, hey, let's figure this thing out, we think we were adding a lot of value because we're giving ultimate flexibility to the client, but we never end up with anything, right? You end up with a bunch of ideas that aren't going to really fit together. But instead, when we show up with a purpose and intent and say, hey, this is the way that we would do this for an organization like yours, then, all right, let's just tweak the fringes, because they can actually react to that and provide some feedback. And we end up with something that is tailored to their specific needs, but it didn't require us starting from scratch, because we would have never got there that way, right? It is and I think this works the exact same way.
Yeah, I think that asking a client to figure everything out is not why they hired us, right? They hired expertise, they hired guidance, they hired, I like that. And AI is the perfect foil for that. I do think it's an interesting, and you said this in the beginning, tech industry runs on waves, right? We need a wave to get all the CIOs to buy something new, right? This is the wave that is the most disruptive to incumbents, disruptive to the way we do business, but it's all going to be for the better, particularly for PS. I'm hoping PS comes out to be exactly what Richard envisions, and that we own our destiny.
Yeah, I will say, particularly for embedded PS, I think the people who have a lot to figure out is some of the system integrators and some of the big consulting shops that have done these large projects over the years. And I think they will figure it out, but I think a lot of them are trying to figure out where they fit into this new world once the engineering side of it gets somewhat commoditized.
Yeah, they have the additional problem of what do you use junior people for that 10 years from now are going to run your firm? Yeah, that's a real challenge for Accenture.
People who are attached to product, embedded PS, the people who are attached to product have a clear value prop that can't be eroded through AI, right? I mean, in some ways it can be accentuated through AI, because AI plus proximity to the product team is, value creation there.
So I want to keep talking AI a little bit, but I want to shift gears, because when we first got hooked up and started talking a little bit, you caught my attention because you've been on a trend lately of using basketball as a metaphor or an analogy to describe consulting, and you tie it into AI, and you do a bunch of things with that. And I always enjoy engaging.
I can't
with
tell
that,
you how many
trying to figure out
players are talking about basketball every day.
Yeah. So I enjoy trying to. It becomes a thought exercise for me, because I'm trying to figure out, all right, how do I then now make this really specific and talk about a specific individual or a player from. So I've enjoyed it. So walk everybody through just your metaphor there, and just some of the examples of how basketball is consulting.
Yeah. I'm passionate about analogies. Like I love, this idea of storytelling. I love the idea of like the way our brain creates connections through analogy or through, different kinds of paradigms or storytelling. And so I was listening to the Acquired podcast, and they had a phenomenal interview with Steve Ballmer. And they just did this little short segment where Steve was really kind of talking about owning the Clippers and what that looks like versus, being CEO of Microsoft and still being on the board at Microsoft. And I was super, super inspired. And so I was like, okay, I'm just like thinking of all these ideas. And I just wanted to like kind of have an outlet for that. So I put together a series of posts on LinkedIn. I'm going to keep doing this for a while. My focus in the beginning is really just about like analytics side of it. But the most simple one is, what if we had a 24-second report card on all the things that we're doing in business? And if you really kind of like channel that and put yourself in that mental place, you wouldn't necessarily want that because that's a lot of pressure every 24 seconds. And these guys, they're playing games, 4 or 5 times a week. So, and for 30, 40 minutes at a time. But do we hold ourselves to that same level of accountability in the business world where there's a scorecard, whether it's 24-second shot clock, whether it's a box score at the end of the game, whether it's a win-loss column? And I would say, I don't think we do. I think we have an opportunity to hold ourselves even more accountable. And I think that the key here is not in a negative way. This isn't like a punitive system where losses have, some negative result. But if without a scorecard, without these sort of periodic KPIs, how do we ensure that we're on the track that we want, or that we get back in the film room and we fix some stuff? Well, I was just going to say, I also heard recently that you guys may know this, but Joe Montana is very heavy in the private equity world and venture capital world. But I guess he's on record saying he's very unsatisfied with this because there's just Joe Montana is oriented as an athlete, whether he's played in the last 20 years or not, which he hasn't, but his mental configuration is very much on athletic performance. And he said, I still like it, but it's deeply unsatisfying because I don't get a box score at the end of the day. I can see other companies perform, but I don't get, the scorecard that I want to see.
We use the analogy all the time of a PS player has got to be like a sports player and know what to do in that environment at that moment, right? And that is again a much different scenario than let it happen to me.
So Dean, you're going to love the future post because my next 8 posts or so is all going to be about player development. How do we get the person ready, both mentally, physically, with content? How do we make sure that the people that we're putting in the field to add value in the world that we live in, we're doing it in an intentional way, like, a skills or a strength and conditioning person does for a basketball player? I think it's really interesting. And the AI world collides here. I just read this morning that the Warriors are actually using AI robots in their practices to simulate defensive configurations. And so it's affecting all walks of life, I guess.
Yeah, they might finally find somebody that can slow down Curry or something if they use robots to do that. So the development of the talent is important, but I'll tie that back to your shot clock analogy there, which is, we as leaders, we as individuals have to hold ourselves accountable and set some expectations for what good performance looks like. And that's the first step to any of the development that happens. So if we have the shot clock, if we have a way of measuring and assessing ourselves on a continual basis, and we view this continual performance improvement as part of our responsibility as consultants or just, employees and individuals, I think that really sets the stage for being able to develop, because like a basketball player is out there and they'll have what happened on this particular possession, and then they'll have the coach tell them, and then they'll watch film, and then if it's particularly an important possession, they'll have analysts and fans and other people talk about it, and then they'll go and say, okay, well, now I've got to fix this. And even if they weren't already intrinsically motivated to do this, now they have this additional motivation to say, I'm going to work with the strength and conditioning coach. I'm going to focus on, I'm going to spend extra time shooting 3-pointers or free throws or whatever that is to help to improve this area where I fell short, so that next time I'm more prepared and that doesn't happen. But that all starts with, well, you have to have some level of expectation and some way of measuring whether or not you're meeting some performance standard. And so that's why the 24-second analogy there, and just this idea of a box score or an individual stat sheet is something that I think is an important mindset to have. And yeah, it was an interesting call out there.
And I think I like the way, Anthony, you talked about getting in the film room and saying, like, how did my performance, what did I do that was excellent that I need to repeat? What did I do that was maybe an inefficient motion or a turnover or an error in play? And how can I avoid it next time? I think that's critical for all of us to do in the world that we live in professionally, but also in life. It's like, so how do we get ourselves into that sort of like introspective mindset? Another basketball and business collision that I came across recently too was an interview with Mark Cuban, and he was talking about owning the Dallas Mavericks and having Jalen Brunson as a rookie player. And he said in the interview, Brunson had one move. He could kind of like this fall away layup, and he would never get a foul call for it. And so when I traded him, I knew the guy was a winner, but I didn't really know the value that I was trading away to the Knicks. That he had the work ethic to be in the gym, working on his mid-range game, working on how to draw fouls, working on a 3-point shot. He's like, there's no way I would have traded him. And I think the thing I take away from that is, one, basketball and business really have a lot in common, but also, importantly, how can you be Jalen Brunson? How can you be the guy who you're a winner at heart and you've got one move and you can execute it, but it's not enough to be a complete player? And to really become that sort of, all NBA level player, you've got to develop your mid range. You've got to develop your distance shooting, And so anyway, I thought that was really interesting too, as a reflection point.
Yeah. Well, I'm about to make a comparison here that I don't intend it to come out the way it's going to, but it's going to compare myself and how we view hiring to how Mark Cuban views running a team. But I would criticize that a little bit because, like, I mean, there's so many instances where you have the chance when you're hiring or you're working with somebody on your team or you're looking at that and building out your roster in this instance to say, okay, here's the natural athletes and the gifted athletes in this, and then here's the people that have the right that have the baseline level of skills, right? I mean, there's some like pass fail level there that you couldn't play in the NBA if you couldn't do some of these things, but like has the right mindset, has the right dedication, has the right mental approach towards I'm going to get better and I'm going to overcome all these things and I'm going to continue to improve there. Like you'd much rather place your bets on those individuals than the gifted athlete that doesn't have to try as hard to get there, right? To perform the same way. And so as we do our interview process and as we just looked at talent over the years, right? Like trying, and that's a hard thing to assess at that stage of it, right? Until they work with you and they spend some time with you. But anything you can do to try to get into what motivates them, what drives them, and is that aligned to the kinds of things that we want to accomplish, right? That's I don't know, an important piece to it.
And the huge weakness that we have is we don't have game film to go back on.
I know. Yeah.
I think about this all Malcolm Gladwell actually wrote an article on this. It was years ago, but it was about like, how do you predict a college quarterback and how they'll play in the NBA? And then he equates it to how do you hire teachers for your school system? Like, the college quarterback, I can watch him play, but it's against different competition. So I have to extrapolate a bunch of stuff. The teacher that you're hiring into your school district or the consultants that we hire in our world, we have to use our language skills much more to like try to figure out who this person is and do they have what it takes to work hard, work in the interest of our clients, develop themselves, continue to develop themselves. It's, roster construction, as we say in this instance, is like, it's a tough game and we don't have game film to rely on.
Well, plus we have the multi-generational problem now that they just have, when we talk about overcoming and learning and working very hard, some of those words are triggers for the newest generations coming in. And again, our profession matters. Our profession matters to the customer, the clients, that matters to the companies being successful, and figuring out those diamonds in the rough, as you guys are saying, that really want more out of themselves and therefore more out of their teams and organizations stuff. Hey, this has been wonderful. We're going to have you back. Leave us with that one thought that you wish everybody kept in front of their mind as we go through this.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the one thing I would say is like, especially for listeners of your podcast, the thing I would double down on the most is what are your human skills and how do they relate? And if I tie in the basketball analogy, I would say our ability to tell stories, particularly custom crafted towards what our stakeholders need, whether that's internal stakeholders, whether that's customers, people in your personal life. How do we create those stories and use them in a way that creates the most value generally for our clients, but everybody in our life?
Yeah, I think that's great. And we appreciate it. As Dean said, we'll have you back on to talk about this. We'll have to get you back on and we'll design the future consultant draft combine or something like that, 3-day event where we're putting them through all sorts of tests and everybody can come check them out and send their teams, and we'll figure out something creative or something fun to do there. But yeah, Richard, we appreciate it, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Hey guys, thank you so much for having me on. It's a real pleasure, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing for the industry.
Well, if you enjoyed this conversation, want to hear more like it, you can find that on our YouTube, our Spotify, Apple Podcast channels. While you're there, like, subscribe, and comment on this program and others, and that helps us get the word out, helps others get to see this and get to access good information like what we just talked about here with Richard today. If you want to reach out to Dean or myself, you can do that on our respective LinkedIn pages, or you can always email the show at podcast@consultantsway.com. Looking forward to hearing from everybody, and we'll see you next time.